You see before you on the screen two books that I own that I scanned into the computer, which basically tell you the whole story of the Calvinist debate. Sadly, the Calvinists are stuck in 1610. That's why their theology hasn't advanced in 400 years. And the reason they're stuck is they're busy arguing against imagined enemies. There was this guy named St. Augustine, that's a book on the right, who was trying to figure out how do you explain the cause of evil in the world. And he wasn't really good at his Bible either, but he was trying. And so he wrote that book on the right, Free Choice of Will. Some people who read it, who are known to history as Pelagians, made the stupid mistake of thinking that their faith had merit after reading his book. It was stupid. And of course faith has no merit. Duh, the faith is in the merit is in the object. That's why you believe. If I go to the store and buy tomatoes, it's because of the merit of the tomatoes. There's no merit in my choosing the tomatoes. The merit is in the tomatoes. That's why I buy them. Duh. Okay, well, the Calvinists unfortunately didn't recognize that obvious logic. And so when they had to counter these so-called Pelagians, the upgraded version of them are like Armenians. Those are two buzzwords in Calvinism. If you're not a Calvinist, you're an Armenian or a Pelagian. They just throw that out to you like it's an epithet. They unfortunately bought the very lie that they were trying to counter. Because the lie that they're trying to counter is the argument that faith has merit. No, faith doesn't have merit. But instead of saying, no, faith doesn't have merit, it's in the object, the Calvinists just take away the faith and say you can't believe except God enables you to believe. So you see, they've been false for 400 years, and they don't even recognize the illogic of their position, because they're basically agreeing, therefore, with the very Armenians and Pelagians they don't like, by taking away the faith in order to argue the faith has no merit. In other words, they're agreeing that faith has merit, just like the stupid Armenians and Pelagians do. Faith has no merit. It's an ability to believe. You believe 1 + 1 = 2. That's a faculty of the soul. There's no merit in it. The merit is in the object. The goodness comes from the object. If you believe a good thing, then good stuff happens to you. If you believe a bad thing, then bad stuff happens to you. The merit's in the object. But the Calvinists don't know that. Now, I had to preface all this by saying that. Let me remove this privacy screen now. Okay, I had to preface what you just saw with that, because you can't understand TULIP, which was the book on the left by David Steele, one of their famous Calvinists. You can't understand the error in the arguments that Calvinists make if you don't know that that's why they make them. They are still stuck in 1610. They label everybody who's not Calvinist as an Armenian. They actually are thinking that faith has merit. And so they have to take the faith away in order to take the merit away. So when they read Bible, that's why they get it so wrong. Is that they're constantly stuck on that stupid argument against fictitious people. And you can't talk to them. They're deaf. So these videos are not for Calvinists. They'll never understand it. Alright? Now, I also don't really want to just say, oh, see how bad they are. Because that's not the point. What I'd really rather do, and I did this in my web pages 8 years ago, so I'm going to sort of do a simplified version of that, is go through TULIP. It's really easy to fix. And fix it. Because TULIP is a neat name, you know. You can remember it easy. And I'm going to go through what they thought TULIP meant and how you can correct it, and it's really easy to correct. Alright, what is TULIP? I mean, go look it up, all this other stuff on the internet, because I'm going to try and make this really simple and quick. TULIP is an acronym that basically stands for the 5 essential doctrines of Calvinism. That was the book that you saw on the right. Let me call it up again. Now that book on the left, it tells you what the 5 points are, and I'm going to summarize them quickly to you. The T in TULIP stands for total depravity. Now, to the Calvinists, that means no free will. That basically, the only decisions you'll ever make will be bad ones and anti-God. Well, you can go through 24 hours in your own day and know that's not true. But that logic doesn't go through to them. All right? I can choose to sin, or I can choose to go to the bathroom. Going to the bathroom is not a sin. I can choose to sin, or I can choose to eat lunch. All right? So I can choose not to sin, obviously. But, logic doesn't work with Calvinists. So their idea of total depravity is that man has no ability whatsoever, okay, to say yes to God. They're wrong about that. What they're right about, though, this is the correction, is that Romans 5:12, 1 Corinthians 15:22, and pretty much every other Bible passage shows you that man's processing of information goes wacko. So he sins. In other words, he could choose not to sin, but he chooses to sin instead, because his information went wacko. And really the most graphic place to look is in Genesis 3 with Adam. The minute after Adam sins, he goes wacko. He becomes afraid. He starts doing works. The works mentality is a religious mentality. Sin is a religious mentality. Okay? Adam's working. And then, of course, he gets afraid of God when God finally arrives. The Lord Jesus Christ is a theophany. He gets afraid of him. That's what sin buys. When you have information, you don't process it well. Now, the Romans 5:12 tells you that the sin nature is genetic. So you have all of these urges that go toward sin in your nature from the minute you're born. It's genetic. It's mot tamut. I covered that in the Genesis videos. And I'm also covering it in the pro-life videos. Dying, you will die. In other words, when Adam lost his connection to God, he basically infused into his biology a rejection urge, a religious rejection urge. Religion is trying to compete with God. Oh, I'm as good as God, you should buy me. That's what the Armenians were doing. And that's the sin nature. It's biological. Now, we give in to our sin nature, but we also don't give in to it. So obviously we have free will. And the other problem that the Calvinists have is they think that if God grants free will, that that's meritorious too. No. The merit is in your other attributes. I have free will. God has free will. I'm made in His image. Of course I have free will. But I'm not perfect. Okay, you see the difference? I can will all kinds of things. But God has other attributes that He uses to choose what He wills. Okay, He's sovereign. That's something the Calvinists get right. God is above all sovereign. But God is not a tyrant. And so the Calvinists basically define God as a tyrant, and that's why total depravity is a tyrannical definition in their eyes. The correct definition of total depravity, by contrast, is just, look, it's a biological depravity. And it gets into your soul when you give into it. So you basically deprave yourself gradually more and more over time. And that's the correct view of it. So now you don't have any conflict if you say, oh, I'm totally depraved, but you just redefine what totally depraved is to its correct definition. That's the Bible's definition.